this Dharma is rarely encountered, even in 100 million kalpas. Having it to hear, accept, and maintain, may I taste the truth of the Tathagata's words.
Good morning, everyone. I have the great pleasure of introducing Wendy Johnson. Where are you, Wendy? Hard to, there you are. So many of you know Wendy, a little or a lot, because I made some notes and lost them. So, but I've known Wendy for 35 years, known her well all this time, so hopefully I don't need any notes to introduce her. Wendy started practicing Zen when she was about 18 or 19 in Jerusalem, and has been deeply devoted to Zen ever since. So she lived in Tassajara for a few years, and then she at Green Gulch for decades, where she was in charge of the gardens, the flower gardens and the greenhouse. And gradually her interest moved more to food production. And through all of this, she's been an ecological activist. So she was the first guiding teacher of the edible schoolyard in Berkeley, which is a model program for kids actually growing, harvesting, and eating what they raised, what they've harvested in school. And she's been involved in many, many other projects. She does a lot of mentoring and teaching young ecological activists and farmers. And she, many of you know, she wrote a wonderful book called Gardening at the Dragon's Gate, about gardening, about her philosophy of that, about Zen, about living and maturing at Green Gulch, where she became a lay teacher. And then she became, again, we're back, I think, in the 80s, a close student of Thich Nhat Hanh, and practiced with him in France, in Plum Village, and in the US, and became a lay teacher in his lineage. And now she's focused mostly on food production and ecological activism, and still always on Zen teaching and retreats. She does a lot of teaching at Upaya these days in Santa Fe, New Mexico. So, and here she is today. So I want to turn it over to Wendy. Thank you so much for coming.
Good morning. I feel such an upwelling of joy this morning to be with you at Stone Creek Zen Center, and to be practicing, and to actually begin on this significant day in the life of the world, to begin with gratitude for Yu Jisho and the deep, strong, original, rowdy, and absolutely still and moving right to the heart of the matter practice of Stone Creek Zen Center. And to have, to be present today with Charlie and Sarah, Dojin and Corin is just an amplified joy for me, and with all of you. So this is my great honor and privilege to be here this morning, so thank you. I'd like to begin with a gratitude to the Coast Miwok people on whose land we have, my husband and I, and many of us have practiced for decades. So gratitude to the deep and current practice of the original people, and particularly on this Indigenous Peoples Day, October 11th and 12th, to begin with gratitude and recognition of the privilege to be a guest in this good land. From Sky Road Webb, a young Miwok man whom I practiced with actually in a writing retreat at up in Point Reyes, his song to Mount Tamalpais. Tamalpais, Tamalpais, oh West Coast Mountain, right eye of the turtle, right eye of the world, West Coast Mountain. Your tears are red, we drink your tears. And so it is today. Our tears are red as the red skies of the climate fires that we've been practicing in the influence of are we drink these salty tears and recognize how important practice is. So again, returning to October 11th today, Indigenous Peoples' Day, all around the world, celebration of original knowledge and traditional ecological knowledge, uncurling, unspiraling, and deeply, deeply manifesting in our times. And Jisho and friends know that, and thank you very much for recognizing my rootedness in root teaching with Thich Nhat Hanh in particular. When I spoke to Sarah about what day I would be able to address you, I knew right away October 11th would be the day, because today is Thich Nhat Hanh's 94th birthday. And all over the world, meditation students who've been influenced by this profound and deep-seated monk. He's been alive 94 years, born in central Vietnam in 1926. And I've had the privilege of practicing with him for, as Jisho said, for 40 years, closely, intimately, and fully. So I'd like to begin just by talking a tiny bit about root teachers and how important it is to be rooted in a tradition. And for me, I first met Thich Nhat Hanh in 1982, although the life of our family was deeply influenced by Thich Nhat Hanh. My father left his job as a publisher in New York City because of his dismay at the situation of the war in Vietnam, feeling that he could not, in good conscience, continue to publish beautiful books without doing something to meet the challenge of the war in Vietnam. So as a young woman, I remember our dining room table. When I visited my dad, my parents had been divorced for many years. When I visited my father, I would see a copy of Lotus in a Sea of Fire, one of Thich Nhat Hanh's earliest books, on the table. And my father would gesture toward that book and say it was a guideline for him of what to do. And he did leave his job and become a full on-draft counselor and set up a vigil every Saturday morning in the little town of Lakeville in Connecticut, when he actually moved out of New York to Connecticut. And every Saturday he stood by himself, unless I was with him. He stood for an hour silently as a witness to peace and to awareness, and speaking truth to power, wanting to demonstrate the importance of peaceful presence. And so Thich Nhat Hanh has had a profound influence on our blood family. And also in 1982, when I met him at Green Gulch Farm Zen Center, he was visiting Tassajara Zen Mountain Center with the Buddhist Peace Fellowship delegation, and came to visit Green Gulch. And I remember meeting him on the road, and he greeted me, and I told him immediately about the effect of Lotus in a Sea of Fire on our family. And I remember him saying, shh, 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 and taking my arm, and we walked very quietly until we paused outside of the Zen Center. And not at this first visit, but closely afterwards, I remember him asking me, because we had immediately a strong relationship and relatedness, and I'm very grateful for that. I remember him asking me, can't we have a Zen center without Zen and without a center? Could we not find and remember that the next Buddha that comes into our times will be Sangha, will come together as Sangha? And can we create a Sangha that meets the call of the world? Shortly after that encounter, I met Thich Nhat Hanh again in New York City, when I, with my father, joined 1 million people on the streets of New York marching for peace. And Thich Nhat Hanh was present in that march and actually stepped into the street and slowed down the inquiry, as Zen people will do. He ground down to very slow pace, turning to the coalition behind him and saying, you move through my country so quickly. To really wage peace takes slowing down and settling in and not hurrying. So let's do that today. And there were many police and other monitors of the march trying to get him to move forward, but for a good 3 or 4 blocks, he walked with excruciating slowness, Richard Zentatsu Baker-Roshi described him as a cross between a tractor and a cloud on that day. So I am deeply grateful to 40 years of training with Thich Nhat Hanh and to his return to Vietnam. I have here, I'm going to open it, a fan brought to me from Barbara Gates from Hue Temple, where Thich Nhat Hanh is today. So I'm fanning good prayers and good wishes to all the root teachers in the world, and gratitude for the presence of good Dharma and engaged activism. Whew. So I'd like to this morning pivot and come into the times we are living in right now. And I feel particularly invited to do so because I'm with you with Stone Creek Zen Center. This is clearly, as we know, a time of reckoning. From that wonderful word, to reck, is to take heed, to be careful, to consider as being, to come to terms with. So this is clearly a time of reckoning and also of unraveling. To ravel, also a beautiful word, meaning to weave, to pull apart the fibers of the weave and to examine everything. Must I ravel out my weaved up folly? Asked Shakespeare. Yes, we must ravel out our weaved up folly in these times. And we cannot, again, ravel them up. We must first really look at our unraveledness right now. Reckon with our unraveledness. And this is an inflection point, a time of discernment, of separating. This is harvest season, so it's a separating of the grain of the world from the chaff. And with discernments, discern is to actually separate the grain from the chaff and to decide how we're going to move forward. So in this consequential time, I turn again to the Buddha's words, his invitation, ehe pasiko, come, see, wanderers of the way, patchrobe monks and monkesses, ehe pasiko, come and see. And the principles of system theory and Buddha Dharma are always process-oriented, rooted in universal change, and utterly available for us to see, especially in unraveled reckoning times. We're looking at a world that is massively non-linear, absolutely contingent, inherently messy, and uniquely elegant in its messiness. Cause and effect are dancing together, cheek to cheek in these times, mutually conditioned, interdependent, and calling on us to develop and deepen moral nerve. So I've been studying and practicing and serving on the front lines of the food injustice right now, food insecurity, yes, but always with an eye, with a deep eye, with that red eye that Sky Road Webb talks about, that Western eye, that eye, bleeding red tears, looking at the situation of the world and not turning away from the truth of the times we're living in right now. When I practiced in the early years with Thich Nhat Hanh, I remember him saying, mindfulness practice, any kind of meditation practice, must be engaged with the world. Once there is seeing, there has to be acting. Otherwise, what is the point of seeing? And in this unique time of pandemic, racial injustice, massive racial injustice, climate chaos, and tremendous food insecurity and poverty, the world is pulled apart, ripped open. We turn now toward the season when the veil between worlds becomes very thin and we can see the living and the dead dancing together. Ancestors are rising up and calling on us to, ehe pasiko, come and see and respond to the call of the world. How will we do that? Each one is one, said Gertrude Stein when she first went into the Louvre Museum upon arriving in France and looking at the paintings in the Louvre Museum. Each one is one. And oh, she said, there are many of them. Each one is one, and there are many of them. So each one of us will find a way, a unique and strong, and I trust and know, especially addressing this Sangha. I feel a lot of emotion about this one, especially addressing the Stone Creek Sangha. I know we're looking at a deep descent into original truth and what we most need for these times. So I remembered all along my Fathoms body, I remembered with quivering awareness the early years of Thich Nhat Hanh saying there are 3 major gifts that are appropriate for these times. The gift, he said, of material resources, and the gift of strong, accurate, penetrating, upright, not uptight, upright Dharma practice. The gift of material resources, the gift of true Dharma, and the gift of non-fear. And I thought at the time, this is incredible teaching. And in these last months, especially during the upwelling of the pandemic, these teachings have come up again to the surface and from the depths. So I've done some investigation and some deep investigation. Of course, we're looking, when we speak of gifts, we're looking at far-reaching generosity, the paramitas that reach across to another shore, reach beyond where we're comfortable, overreach, reaching in, far-reaching truth. And of course, it would be so that generosity is the first. Dana, generosity, giving, great giving is a first of the paramitas. But even older than that, I wanted to go down farther and deeper. And this has been a time of study, of deep study, and gratitude for the gift of study and for the gift of Buddhist teachings. And so going down deeper and deeper to 2nd century Indian philosopher and monk Nagarjuna, a great teacher. Nagarjuna, the one who guards the jewels of the Nagas. Nagarjuna, the monk who protects the jewels. And it's said that according to legend, Nagarjuna descended to the palace of the Dragon King at the bottom of the sea to retrieve the perfection of wisdom teachings from the bottom of the sea, protected by the dragon at the base of the world. And of course, it was in story and myth and deep truth, old truth, original truth, autochthonous truth. It's the Buddha who entrusted these texts to the dragon at the bottom of the sea for protection. And the dragon king or the dragon monk descended into the waters of a serpent dragon to ask of the dragon king, may I have these teachings? They are needed for these times. And the 3 forms of far-reaching generosity are part of those retrieved and raised up teachings coming. We imagine, we're not completely sure, but it is believed that the source of these 3 teachings on generosity, far-reaching generosity, come from Nagarjuna and are beautifully, and I've studied this, so I wouldn't not dare come before your Sangha without having studied. So I've got some study bunions on my butt from really going down and reading the texts. So the Maha Prajna Paramita Shastra on the perfection of wisdom in 5,000 lines, gorgeous, important teaching on what it means to be generous with material resources. So let's go down into this and take a look. When we talk about material resources, amisa dana, the material gifts, food, clothing, housing, protection, and satisfaction from hunger and thirst, the gift of a satisfied mind. You can't get no satisfaction until you have the gift of material resourcefulness and are willing to share it. So amisa dana, we ask and know, first of all, may we with all beings realize the emptiness, even the emptiness as we take food in the meditation hall. May we realize the emptiness and of the three wheels that turn, and the gift that we receive, the gift of good food. Giver, receiver, and gift are then one. And food is never earned. It is always a gift. Giving food is not a beneficent act one performs for another, or an act that you ever take credit for or feel guilty for or worthy or unworthy of. Giving is life itself. Wise and realistic in giving, the root, says the text, the root of all good dharmas in chapter 36. The root of all good dharmas is material generosity, and you're giving without pride. This is not mine. I am not this. I do not own this. I am not this. This is not mine. This is not myself. So the gift of food, and you give without any expectation of return as you have received. And a beautiful Zen grace. Eat that you may be eaten. Eat and be eaten. So we begin with the gift of material resources. Without this resourcefulness, there can be no possibility or hope of practice, because we need the strength of good food. And I remember being in Plum Village with Thich Nhat Hanh in the early years. One night a week, we practiced, or at least some of us practiced with Thich Nhat Hanh, not receiving food in the evening, and instead contemplating what it means to be hungry and how we can, as a community, feed a hungry world. And so Plum Village, named for the 1,000 plum trees planted of the great Pruneau d'Agen, the great delicious prune of Agen region that is dried, and was the ideal was we'll plant 1,000 trees, harvest these trees, and then offer the fruit for sale to support hungry children in Vietnam. So every Wednesday night we spent, we had a table that was laid out, a banquet table with just water, and the opportunity to contemplate together. So I remember that was a great material gift, and to spend an evening returning to the source of gratitude for food and what it means, and to make a pledge in that feeling of hunger, real hunger, feeling or slight hunger, recognizing real hunger. So the gift of material, amisa dana, extraordinarily important. And the gift of Dharma teaching, Dharma. I love this. My husband, who's a frontline farmer and Dharma troublemaker, reminds me that Dharma, the root of Dharma, Dher, D-H-E-R in Sanskrit, Dher, to uphold, to be upright, to be, to be upright, and to uphold and sustain. Thank you. Again, I'm not looking at my notes. I'm speaking right into your heart. And I have notes. You could rustle and hear my rustling for weeks. There is such, Jisho knows me well. I have many notes with purple handwriting on them. And I'm not looking at them. I'm speaking right into your heart and mind this morning. So Dher, uphold, sustain, Dharma, same as farm. They're cognates. So good farming upholds and sustains Dharma, and good Dharma farms the living ground, leaving no trace, hopefully, turns the wheel, the three wheels. We say the emptiness of the three wheels, a beautiful gesture, those three wheels, but they leave a rut on the ground if we're not careful. We don't want deep rutted Dharma. We want Dharma that turns the wheels and remembers the unity of giver, receiver, and gift, way up in the middle of the air, as Ezekiel says, turning the wheel way up in the middle of the air. So to turn the Dharma wheel means to find the depth of teaching that will sustain you and give you courage in order to be generous, to reach beyond your limits, and to be generous beyond measure. Opens the door, writes Nagarjuna, to the deathless dimension. The gift of Dharma surpasses all other gifts. And then lastly, the gift of non-fear or courage. And I love that these three roll together, three wheels rolling together. So the gift of non-fear, you think of the gesture of the Buddha sitting, and when doubt arises, right hand on the earth. Iconographically, the spirit of the earth reaches up underneath the Buddha's hand to confirm, yes, you may sit on the ground. Do not waver, do not wonder. But to me, that's almost too binary. Here's the great Buddha teacher and the spirit of the earth, obviously feminine, rising up. Beyond that, I like to think of the Buddha putting the right hand on the earth and the earth cracking open, and bodhisattvas, as in the 15th chapter of the Lotus Sutra, bodhisattvas coming out to do the work we're called to do right now. So the earth opens up and bodhisattvas come out to serve in every way. And in fact, Trungpa Rinpoche says, even fear is frightened by bodhisattvas' fearlessness in coming up. Hand on the earth, I doubt my position, I doubt my authority, I doubt everything and all that is. Give me sustenance, O living earth, and the earth cracks open and bodhisattvas come up. That's one gesture, the Bhumi Sparsa gesture of touching the earth. And the matching gesture is the left hand raised up to show abhaya, fearlessness, the gesture of being absolutely unafraid in impossibly difficult times. What are you showing? A naked palm. Now, of course, this gesture has been misused and appropriated. How? The great gesture of the native people. But in fact, native people, I would not be surprised if original native people encountering the unknown put up the hand to say, I will serve you food and show you I stand before you unarmed. So this gesture of radical, nonviolent readiness and unarmed willingness to go forward. So that gesture, Abhaya, Giri Monastery, Fearless Mountain, for the Thai forest monks, Abhaya Giri Mountain, Abhaya Giri Monastery, Fearless Monastery, and fearless donation of life. You donate your organs, you donate your entire being. The tiger story of the Buddha, the Jataka tales. You donate everything you have to create a world where we're not limited and paralyzed by fear. And we're not turning away from the classic 5 great fears, a fear of death. And they're all present right now. Fear of death, fear of illness, fear of loss of mind, fear of loss of livelihood, and then fear of public speaking. So those great fears are in our hands to release and to find far-reaching generosity with these gifts. So these teachings have been incredibly important to me. I've done, just been immersed in going down into a dragon's cave a bit, and always expressing gratitude to Nagarjuna, to the first teachers, and to the dragon, to the one who knits together earth and sky, again and again, known and unknown worlds, gardening at the dragon's gate, at the edge of the unknown. I remember working with Jisho because we would not have this green book in the world without Jisho Carey Warner helping make it possible. She's a Red Pen Roshi editor of this book. And it would have been 5 times the size of what I'm holding this morning had it not been for Jisho Warner. So Gardening at the Dragon's Gate, we fought for this title. Bantam said, no, it's too scary. Eventually, then Jisho said, then tell her to find another title. And eventually, the editor at Bantam said, we have a title. Oh, what is the title? I asked her. Gardening at the Dragon's Gate. I said, what happened? She said, we're living in dragon times. She knew that in 2008, with collapse of the economy, we're living in dragon times. We can deal with this title. Gardening at the Dragon's Gate, at work in the wild and cultivated world. So how do we work in the wild and cultivated world? What's our calling? So pull your zafu close to the precipice, and I'll tell you a story. F. Scott Fitzgerald, pull your chair close to the precipice, and I'll tell you a story. I'll tell you a story of wondering what the heck are we going to do in these pandemic times when people are hungry. So Peter and I my husband and I met at Tassajara, and we married at Green Gulch. outside celebrating under the old oak tree. We're one of the first young couples to get married at Zen Center, and to be at Green Gulch for 25 years and to work in the fields. And now we live next door. In 2000, we moved along with Kathy and Norman Fisher and other friends, Martha DeBarros and Lee DeBarros, some others of us who needed to move away so the next generation, with whom you're practicing deeply and fully right now, could fledge and have some space and be able to look forward to teaching. So we moved off campus down to the end of the road, about a mile away. And so it was clear when the pandemic hit that we were going to need to distribute food. And in fact, I remember that at Green Gulch in early March, yes, there was a beautiful ceremony of offering the first seeds of the season. And I have the chant that we chanted: we offer the sowing and tending of these seeds to our great original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, whose real nature is in harmony with the mysterious process of living and dying. May we labor in love and awareness with deep humility, open to the true nature of all being. And then each student sowed a seed. We chanted the Metta Sutta. The flats were put away, and lo and behold, in May, a few months after this ceremony, the Green Gulch fields were arrayed in a tapestry of green kale and red chard and mustards, collards and purplet onions and multi-headed lettuces from all over the world. And where was the harvest going to go? Because right at that time, California shut down in deep awareness and commitment to stopping the coronavirus from spreading. 78,000 people had died then in May, and we had fields full of produce. What were we to do? So we thought, let's make a plan. We can do this. And so walking up to Green Gulch, Peter and I proposed, and of course it was a mutual proposition with Sarah Tasker and the students at Zen Center. We agreed, okay, you guys harvest all this gorgeous food that you cannot take to market, because not only is California in quarantine, so is Zen Center in quarantine, San Francisco Zen Center. So harvest the food, bring it in, and whatever you want to distribute, Peter and I will take it out into the world and it will be distributed. We'll be the bridge. 20 people crossing 20 bridges, 20 people crossing a bridge. Wallace Stevens says that's 20 people crossing 20 bridges into 20 different worlds. So we knew we're going to cross a bridge. We'll be a bridge, bringing the food out of Green Gulch and into the world where there is real hunger. So this was our plan. Pretty simple. And let me just, before moving ahead, why was this so important? The Buddha taught, I'm looking for my eyeglasses, and I am going to refer to my notes here. The Buddha taught that hunger is the worst kind of illness, and that food is the gift of life. Today, in the United States alone, 1 out of 5 people are hungry, and now 1 out of 3 of them are children. 54 million citizens, 18 million children in the United States are experiencing massive hunger caused by chronic food insecurity. And worldwide, 10 million people, again, most of them children, die from hunger every year. And during this global pandemic, 250 million people worldwide are malnourished and without access to food, the gift of life. So I'm not an advocate for well-intentioned charity or for the so-called poor and needy. To me, food and plants are always medicine meant to be readily available to a hungry world. And decades of fierce Dharma training and work, and especially the work of Buddhist Global Relief, show clear pathways for alleviating hunger. So founded in 2008 by Buddhist activist and monk, scholar monk, Bhikkhu Bodhi, the Buddhist Global Relief works to combat chronic local and global hunger and to provide direct material support. So I never had a sense that we were going to be doing charity. We instead were working with the core message from the Buddhist Global Relief in full accord with their mission, which promotes food sovereignty, not dependency. All beings must have access to healthy, nutritious, nutrient-dense, appropriate food, which is also medicine, in order to sustain a full life of dignity and moral clarity. And that was our emphasis. So how are we going to do this? Here we are, goody goodies who live in Muir Beach with a great little red Toyota truck and ample nerve. And mind you, we penetrated the baffle of the beloved San Francisco Zen Center and stood there in our dotage and said, we're taking the food out. So whatever you want to give, we'll take, including seedlings. How are we going to do it? Obviously, we're going to do it with people that live in the world. We're going to connect with programs that know what hunger is. And we know where they are. Marin City, where we've been practicing, with the beautiful work that's happening in the public schools in Marin City, feeding 186 children every day with good food. So of course we're going to go to that school, to Martin Luther King School in Marin City. Of course we're going to go to the Fellowship Church in Marin City. Peter's going to deliver food to them. We have nothing to say about where this food is going. We are the deliverers. So the red Toyota rolls up. People come out, they take the food, they distribute it. They know what they're doing, and we luckily know who they are. This is really key, to not get messed up in, oh, here I come, poor hungry people, to give you food. I, obviously well-fed me, will now give you food. No, it's more complex and dragony than that. So Marin City first. And then we reached out to apprentices that have fledged, with whom I love and know and work and practice with all my heart. Sarah Tasker, Manal, Jack Thomas, they're in the world. They know where the food is needed. And so with their help, and at the Edible Schoolyard, Jisho mentioned the Edible Schoolyard, we took 100 flats of seedlings. That's 20,000 seedlings, friends, over this 6-month period. And it was obvious they're more than Green Gulch could plant, and gorgeous plants. And Sarah, Jack, Peter, Wendy, we knew who to give them to, and we trusted the networking, Buddha networking, non-linear, messy, inherently elegant. That this food will be shared in the form of seedlings for the living earth. So without Sarah, Jack, Manal, we never would have been able to do it. And without the Edible Schoolyard, because not only did they plant the entire garden where children can't go, we're hoping that children can return to school in Berkeley. And if they do, their garden is pumping full of food. But meanwhile, that food is going to Berkeley Food Network in the heart of North Berkeley. Let me just ruffle through my notes and tell you a little bit about Berkeley Food Network, because this is worth knowing. So the Edible Schoolyard grows seedlings from the Zen Center, sown with prayer and wishes, and then those seedlings come into full production, and then they're offered. And during the height of the growing season, Peter made 2 trips a week, his truck loaded to capacity with Zen produce, and also produce was coming from the Edible Schoolyard, to donate to Berkeley Food Network, community-centered food hub established in 2016, recognizing that 1 out of 5 residents in Berkeley, and most of them students at Cal, are hungry. So this organization, this extraordinary organization, runs on an on-site pantry, many mobile food pantries, pop-up groceries, giveaway sites throughout the city, hub kitchens where they create more than 1,000 meals a week that are served directly to people who are hungry on site in Berkeley. And it's Zen food. Hey, material resources, no tag, no ticket, no acclamation, and no turning away from it. So that food went right into the source. And at Berkeley, gratitude to the Edible Schoolyard also for distributing food throughout the Oakland Unified School District as well. So thousands of seedlings. Just from that old rickety red truck going out and bringing Zen to the world. And then I think one of the last things I want to say, I'm looking at my, oh yeah, so let me whip along here. One of our closest colleagues this summer has been the Cultural Conservancy, a native-based, indigenous-led intertribal organization. And Peter and I have been working with the Cultural Conservancy for almost a decade, growing food together every week from May through right now. We're the last to go. We're still distributing to the Cultural Conservancy. So every week we take a truckload, or in this case, my Fit car, my little Honda Fit, loaded to the gills with produce. And I meet Maya Harjo, who's a 29-year-old Paw, Shawnee, Muskogee Creek, Seminole Native woman. She's the head farmer right now at the Cultural Conservancy. And we fill up her farm truck with cool Zen greens. From a single leaf of cabbage, create a 16-foot Buddha, right? As Ed Brown says, food is not matter, but the heart of matter, the beating pulse of earth and sky, land and truth. So from a single collard leaf or cabbage leaf, create a 16-foot Buddha. And 16-foot Buddha, come down to the ground and become a cabbage leaf. Because the world is hungry, we need to eat you now, and rightly so. So we join them, and they are growing at the Indian Valley Organic Farm, where I used to work with them. They're growing fields of Seneca corn, Chimayo chili peppers, Lakota squash, bear paw beans from the Haudenosaunee. And these medicine crops are supplemented with cool coastal relatives from Green Gulch. And this is thousands of pounds of food. Where does it go? Every week, native CSA boxes or community supported agriculture boxes are filled with this produce, a blend of Zen and native world, distributed to feed families through California Indian Museum, an American Indian Children's Resource Center in Oakland, and the Segura Land Trust, an urban indigenous women-led organization honoring sacred site and ancestral burial grounds throughout traditional Native American lands of the California East Bay region. And for the Cultural Conservancy, food security is political and cultural, nutritional and cosmological. And this agile organization is infused with a long-term commitment for nourishing all beings, from ancestors to future generations, with medicine of the land. What is DNA? They ask each other with a kind of impish twinkle, an indigenously impish twinkle. DNA, descendants and ancestors. DNA, descendants and ancestors. We're going to feed DNA, our descendants and our ancestors, with this food, lifetime after lifetime. So this has been our work, and it's been amazing. We truly have learned a tremendous amount. I don't want to pontificate. I think you get what I'm talking about. I remember Jisho telling me years ago about Katagiri Roshi keeping a hat pin on his altar, a sharp and long hat pin. From the old world where you pin your hat up to hold your hair under, you pin your hat. This long, sharp hat pin. And maybe Jisho asked him, what is that for? And I think he said something like, for popping balloon mind. She'll correct me and say it exactly how he said, for popping puffed up mind, for popping puffed up mind. So we know there's no such thing as anonymous food. And yet you don't claim that you have given this food. We know better than that. We know better because we sing every day. 72 labors bring us this food. We should know how it comes to us. In Thich Nhat Hanh Sangha, beautiful earth and air and water and sky combine to make this meal. Numberless beings, this is from Upaya Zen Center, numberless beings give their life and labor that we may eat. May we be nourished, that we may nourish life, lifetime after lifetime. So this is our vow, this is our practice, and this is Ehe Pasiko. Come and see if it's possible. I tell you it is, lifetime after lifetime, it's possible, and it's happening, and we have nothing to do but to continue engaging. Now we see what's needed, so we act. And this Buddha, this future Buddha, will be a Sangha that can form and perform and function in this kind of immense complexity and emergence. So thank you for your attention and your invitation. And I look forward to dialogue, challenge, anything you want to bring up. And again, a heart full of gratitude this morning.
I wanted to start, Wendy, by just saying happy birthday, a couple days belated.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great being of the earth. And do you have any news of Thich Nhat Hanh?
I do. Thank you for asking. I have updated news. The most reliable source to find how he's doing is the Plum Village website, although they are a little proper and demure and not so revelatory. He has been literally refusing. His right hand is paralyzed, but his left hand is not. You may know those who are listening that in 2014, Thich Nhat Hanh endured a massive cerebral hemorrhage on Veterans Day, on the laying down of arms, Armistice Day, and has been in the care of monks and nuns of Plum Village. Right now, he's at his home temple in Hue. May the cool breeze blow. He's in Hue. He's been there for 2 years. Monks are gathering, monks and nuns and lay practitioners from all over the world are gathering. And some people who've not been home to Vietnam in years are receiving visas from the Vietnamese government to come in. So he's refused to have, he can hold up his left hand, I fear not, I don't want water or food. So he has been not receiving water and food, but just recently maybe a little bit of water and food. So I think today in particular, he asked, or through the community, through the Sangha, through the Maitreya Sangha of the community of inner being, asking that we all spend a day, within quiet walking or contemplation of what matters most. This is a birthday continuation, and he's very close to crossing the threshold into what Soen Roshi described as the great majority, joining the great majority of those who are beyond the gateway of the great mystery. So he is definitely weakened and surrounded by love and attention in his home temple, which was his wish. I can give shorter answers, believe it or not. Terse is not my forte, as Jisha will tell you, but I can do it.
It would be disappointing, Wendy.
Yeah.
So please, give your full answer. Thank you for that.
Okay. Thank you for asking. It's a wonderful picture. I hope it shows up. Wonderful picture of, does it show?
Yes.
An old picture of Ty sitting on the ground at Plum Village, just talking to us. Actually, I think that's from the Ojai Institute. We had a retreat years and years ago for artists and activists, and a 10-day retreat. And you know what? We kept silence for 7 days. People didn't introduce themselves until the 7th day, and that's from that retreat. So the beat goes on. Other comments, questions? Zen Center, San Francisco Zen Center has been able to go back to the markets a little bit. I don't want it to seem like they gave away everything, but they were it's very rare that food distributors like us get to distribute the best food. And you know how this works. But because the best food couldn't go to market, that's what Sarah and Emma and everyone sent to the out to the world. And it was extraordinary to deliver that food, which is pure medicine when it's at its height, newly chilled, and we hurried to get it right to hungry people. So I feel like a lot of people there's been a sneaky substantiation of Zen through collard greens and all that food. The sneaking Zen. Material resources. Anmisa Dana. Thank you, Nagarjuna.
Can I say something? Of course.
Please, try to get a word in, please.
I think that anybody here has really experienced food deprivation in our community, at least all of us. And it's hard to I think hunger is sort of abstract for us, maybe.
Right.
And so a couple of weeks ago, I just wanted to say, and maybe I've already said this, but I'll tell you, I was coming down a main artery in our town, Stony Point Road. And I thought it was an accident down at the corner. I'm going, it's like it was really far away from where I was trying to turn. And, all the cars were backed up and gosh darn it. And so I just sort of went around it. And I got down to the corner and realized that these were all people that were turning into the church parking lot to get food, bags of food. And that was a moment that really brought it home for me, really specifically, because otherwise this is all sort of an abstract thing.
Yeah. And we see, you know, we see, I mean, Zen Center, San Francisco Zen Center, hopefully, I know because of beginning with prayer and all of our, I trust all, I don't want to generalize. I want to be very specific. In general, everything is specific. So playing with genus and species. So in general, everything is specific, and hunger is specific. Real hunger is specific, and we don't turn away from that truth. But I think that it's extremely significant that the Nobel Peace Prize was awarded on my birthday, the day, actually the night of my birthday, the night after my birthday, to the World Food Program of the United Nations, a program that understands 265 million people in this world are hungry now. Chronic food, much of the hunger caused by war and sanctions, So looking at hunger in Yemen, Lebanon, Ethiopia, Sahel, the Sahel, the Chad, the desert locusts, that hunger is connected to the way we live and conduct business. And we are intimately involved. So if Zen Center, I'm getting back, if San Francisco Zen Center sows seeds with prayer and has the privilege to quarantine to this day, then we also have the privilege to, in our quarantine, recognize that there are thousands of frontline farm workers bringing in 1/4 of the food of this nation comes from California, and they are working around the clock, and they themselves are hungry. So this is not tenable. People who've served in food pantries for years are now in line, like you described. They're now in line, and just, you know, and just something that they never believed would be possible. And in Muir Beach, we're experiencing that too. So no one is exempt from the need for amisadana, or the generosity of material resources. Whew.
Good morning, Wendy.
Hi there. Oh, well, look who's here.
So lovely to see
Hallelujah.
you. Kate is sorry to not be here. She
It's
has
lovely to see you, David. Oh my
skipping
God.
workshop. Oh yeah. So
I hope Peter will come in
I'd
up here.
like to meet you and Peter, to really get to know you, starting 30 years ago when we got to spend a little time down at Green Gulch overnight with our 5-year-old son at the time, who's
Right. Michael, how old is he now? My gosh.
35.
35. Peter, just for 1 second.
So anyway,
Wait, there's going to be an emanation here. Here's the farmer who never
Hi, David.
appears at Dharma Talks, but to see you and to
Hi,
see that one.
Show.
don't worry, Peter. Some of your secrets are safe with me.
Yeah.
So thank you so much to both of you
Yeah.
for being a conduit from the earth to people.
Yeah.
All of the wonderful things that the earth provides us. So I just wanted to honor both of you for your dedication over the years to that practice.
Well, we
Thank
couldn't do it without Harmony Farm and Supply. Harmony Farm Supply keeping us strong and ready. So thank
Good.
you. Thank you for your extended practice, and love to Kate. Thank you.
Wendy?
Hello.
Hi, my name's
Hi.
Kate. I haven't had the pleasure to meet you, but I really enjoyed your
This
talk.
morning.
I love all the literary references. But I just wanted to take this opportunity to encourage people to volunteer here in Sonoma at the Redwood Empire Food Bank,
Oh boy.
an amazingly run organization that makes it super easy to volunteer. You go to the website, you sign up for like a 2-hour shift. Everything is socially distanced, clean, masks. I mean, you would not have to worry even if you are like a person with, you know, conditions. So that's it.
Yeah, if I may, it's one of the finest food banks in the Greater Bay Area. So gratitude to Sonoma County for that extraordinary amplitude of wealth of food that's being offered.
They are giving away 3 times as much as they did last year at this time.
And we're not finished. The harvest is on right now. We're not finished, not at all. So thank you for your service, and thank you for that encouragement. Yeah. And if you have an apple tree or a fig tree or a tree a bearing tree that is bearing much more than you can actually sustain and use, please know people are hungry, and they'll be grateful for the food, for the gift of food.
Wendy, thank you so much for your talk. I really enjoyed it. And I also listened to your talk at the Upaya Zen Center on global warming. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
What you said today that really struck me, and it's something that we don't often think about, is that what we have, we do not own. And I just want to thank you for saying that. I think it's a powerful statement.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, unless there's a burning last something. Can you see?
Hi, Roberta. Can you hear me?
Yes.
No, you're not hearing me.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
No, you've muted, Roberta.
Now you've muted yourself, Roberta.
You now can you
There you
hear
go.
me? I met you years ago a few times at Green Gulch in the garden. And I want to thank you. I appreciate very much one time, I think it was during the late 80s, I'm not totally sure. You advocated for me because I was hitchhiking back and forth to Green Gulch because I have a disability and I do not drive. You were so generous in advocating for people to share in carpooling and offering transportation to others without. I just want to thank you for that. I'll always remember that.
You're so welcome, Roberta. I
So
remember you.
kind.
I remember you.
You're very sweet.
Yeah, I
Thank you.
remember you. I do.
Yeah, I'll always be grateful for your generosity.
Let's see.
Should
One
we-
more. Yeah.
Dojin, will you lead the closing chant?
Yes. So the chant is in the chat, and make sure. I'm just gonna mute everybody.
May I just, as I wanted to just close with this very brief
Yes, please.
insight from Thich Nhat Hanh, and then we move right into the chant. In our former lives, we were rocks, clouds, trees. This is not just a Buddhist understanding. This is science. We human beings are a very young species. We were plants, we were trees, and now we've become humans. We have to remember our past existences and be humble.
For great Bodhisattva vows, beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are infinite. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is boundless. I vow to realize it.